Sanibonani babukele emakhaya, igama lami uZinhle wakwaNgubane, and welcome to Gospel News SA. Now, you know Gospel News SA brings you what is happening in the gospel space, and we are here on The Close-Up. Now, today we are going to be talking about a conversation that is very difficult to have. One of the pandemics that have struck our country, unfortunately. And we have a community leader who's going to share some insight as to how churches are involved or can get involved in this particular thing. So we are going to be talking about gender-based violence, and we've got Pastor Martin here with us. Pastor, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Great, thank you. Please do introduce yourself, Pastor Mgiba.
Yes.
I always plan to get this right.
Yeah.
Where are you from? You were a pastor. How did it start? Just a brief summary.
Okay, so as you said, my name is Martin. Originally from Bushbuck Ridge in Mpumalanga province. We're currently based in Fourways, and I'm pastoring a church called Eternal Glory Church. I'm married to Spelele Mgiba. Been married for around 2 years, and I'm absolutely excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for making the time. So, Pastor, like I said, we have this pandemic in South Africa, and I think it's such a touchy subject for a lot of women specifically. Now, I want you to give me your take. What are your thoughts on gender-based violence? What do you think?
Look, I think
of it?
I think ultimately, obviously, we have the term gender-based violence, and as you rightly pointed out, it's a pandemic in this country. But I think on a broader, scale, I don't necessarily think that we are limited to say gender-based violence in South Africa. We have a violence issue, and I think that's something that we have to address. Now, when you zoom in on the concept of say gender-based violence, it's obviously violence that is directed towards women. And that's quite a big one. And I'll tell you what, and I hope I'm not going way too forward. I think ultimately the biggest cause around this is around men's entitlement, or their thoughts around that they're entitled to how women ought to conduct themselves, their bodies, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a pastor, as a community leader, I want to find out, do you think that churches are doing enough, or do you think there's anything that they do to eradicate this gender-based violence?
No, like as I said, I think, violence on a broader scale is an issue in South Africa. And then there is, obviously, you have to now zoom in on the issue of gender-based violence. Now, obviously, in the sense that, you'll find men that are abusive in the church, but we don't necessarily have, audience with all the men. But ultimately, what we try to do on our part is just really to explain the whole concept of, let's say, a contract between a man and a woman. So let me just paint maybe somewhat of a grievous picture.
Okay.
A person is in a relationship with someone, and they get into an argument. Let's even take it a bit further and say, let's say the lady cheated. There are some people who think that, because there's already a mindset that says, I own this person. If she does something wrong, I have to correct her, but that correction is probably even at a higher level. But the thing is this, when we enter into a relationship, there's a contract that we enter into. And that contract is not necessarily to say that you are giving ownership to me. We are in a partnership. Now, the nature of that relationship, this is how it would look like. Let's say this person obviously cheats, or whatever the case may be. They have not given ownership to you, right?
Absolutely.
So it means that the rights that are available to you as a man are, one, you could stay, or you could walk away.
True.
Now, from what I've mentioned, there's nothing about you laying a hand on someone. There's nothing about you shooting that person. And I think the whole idea here is just people have the wrong construct in terms of what that relationship is meant to be about. Now, from a church perspective, what we've begun to speak about is around the whole concept of how males and females, right, are both joint heirs of God. They are both made in the image of God. All of us are bearers of dominion. It's not as if, it's only men who have this type of thing. So I think we've had to just speak to men concerning their own identity and the identity of another person. Because when you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, God gave men dominion over the birds of the air, over the fish in the sea, over every little creeping thing that creeps over the earth. But he never gave dominion, or rather, never gave Adam dominion over Eve. So that's something that we always have to point to. Yeah.
That is so deep. So you mentioned a very critical point, and I think it's very deep. The entitlement that men have. I think that's the biggest problem. Do you think there's any way that mindset can be shifted, so that a man knows, I am not entitled to her. I'm here, we're in a partnership, I'm here to protect her, but I'm not entitled to control her. Can we change that? Is there any way that can be changed?
I think we just have to keep on saying the same message over and over again. I think for me, what has really helped me, I mean, let's say in the context of marriage, you won't always agree. There are moments where you'll even be pushed to the edge.
Very true.
But because there's been this, a consistent call of saying you are not allowed to touch a woman, that has been my point of reference. So I think we have to be consistent in terms of just speaking that message that you are not allowed to do that. And also I think one of the things that empower this mindset is the fact that we've created a dependency culture on women. A man is not your provider. A man, and I would even say this, as much as we can say that we are protectors, we don't really see that in scripture. So you have to take responsibility in terms of that role of being a provider for yourself, that role of being even a protector. So in terms of in your space as well. Look, if let's say we're to address the issue of rape, I'm sorry for using this reference again, ultimately we have to speak to the woman, or to the man rather, and say don't rape. Not speak to the woman in terms of how not to be raped, right? But I think also we have to speak around the issue of how do you as a woman begin to guard your own space? How do we talk about your physiological movements? For one, now let's bring it to this. If ever there's a red flag that this person is most likely to lay a hand on you, walk away. Leave as soon as possible. And also for us as men, we must appreciate the fact that it's her right to walk away. Don't ignore the red flags.
That is so deep. I feel like that's a whole new conversation that really needs to be had. Because like you're saying, we as women always feel like, I need to stay. He is supposed to do this. But the reality, like I said, different conversation for a different day, but what you said is very powerful. Now, how do you think we as communities and churches can, sort of assist people that are affected by this violence? Do we have a shelter where we bring them in? Besides talking, what else can be done?
I think, one of the strangest things about abusive relationships, and when we talk about abusive relationships, we're not just going to limit it to physical abuse. I think we also have to look at the element of emotional abuse. One of an abuser's greatest weapons is that of isolation. So they'll isolate you from your community and from your tribe. So I think one of the things that we need to begin to do is maybe just, reorientate the people who have been in abusive relationships back into community, back into tribe. Here's the thing, we have a role to play in sort of bringing you back into community, but you have to want it as well.
Very true.
But the unfortunate thing is that, abuse dehumanizes you so much that you even begin to feel that you don't belong in community. So I think there's a role that we have to play as churches, as communities of just, I think even, let me just break it down to this, that we have to see the soul of presence. At times it's not even necessarily about saying the right things. It's about simply being present. We are here. We might not necessarily understand what you're going through. We might not even have the right words to say it to you. But we promise you, we are here.
That's deep. So you have heard it from Pastor Martin. Please don't move. We will be right back.
What's wrong? What's going on? Babe, I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how to be a godly woman and to also find the right man.
Boo, I feel you. Like Proverbs 31 this, Proverbs 31 that. We don't know which woman we're supposed to be. But I heard there's a show called The Bible Today, and they discuss how these verses like Proverbs 31 are supposed to be relevant in our lives today.
Weibo.
And Gospel News was saying,
Is it?
yeah, we can tune in together.
Welcome back, Babugeli. You're still tuned into Gospel News SA, The Close-Up. Now, as you know, The Close-Up talks about all the experiences that people go through and how they overcome those particular challenges. But now we're still on the topic of gender-based violence, and we're still with Pastor Martin. So, Pastor, going on with the conversation of gender-based violence, would you say it's a mental issue? Like where can we say this thing derives from? Or besides the entitlement that you mentioned, do you think it has anything to do with mental illness or mental health?
I think,
anyway.
Look, I think you can't necessarily rule that out completely. But I think if you say it's solely limited to mental health, you take away the element of accountability.
Right.
I think it's mostly around the socialization issue. As I've stated before, we live in a violent society, far beyond gender-based violence. In South Africa, we have a violence issue,
Right.
and a lot of us grew up being exposed to that type of violence, and as a result of that, we tend to project it into the lives of other people. So we could say that it also stems from societal issues. It stems from a person's background. What I've seen about hurt people is that they tend to hurt other people as well.
Absolutely.
So if there's pain that has not really been dealt with, there's rejection, there's insecurities that someone is going through, and they've not really been processed, what happens is that they will tend to project that into the life of another person. Also, another thing, I think in the day and age that we're living in, quite a number of women are quite accomplished, and if a man is not secure in his own identity, he'll project that onto you. So that in itself is probably not a conversation for the man, probably a conversation for the sisters, that you have to see those type of red flags. And I want to say this statement maybe as a parting shot. When it comes to those type of abusive relationships, don't follow or don't listen to promises. Follow patterns. It's quite strange about how oftentimes people who are abusive, it's not necessarily that the fatal shot was not the first shot.
Yep.
You can see a track record of abuse in this person's life, or you might even find certain sisters who have seen this person abusive in a relationship with another person, and they thought that this person they would be able to change them. But what I've seen, according to pattern, is that people tend to get worse instead of getting better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very powerful. So, the red flags,
Yeah.
right? We see the red flags, we ignore the red flags.
Yeah.
Now, a background issue is not something that we can instantly fix.
Yeah.
Would we recommend therapy? Would we recommend people to come talk to pastors about issues? What recommendation do we make to these particular people? Because it is something that needs to be addressed. It is something that needs to be spoken of. But how?
No, but I think the ecosystems, obviously, there's obviously economic limitations. So the means of rehabilitation have to be somewhat organic. I think people have to pursue organic mentorship relationships. So even for some of us who are not necessarily doing that type of thing, we need to begin to pour out into the next generation. And then there's also obviously churches. We can play an important role in sort of teaching men about how they're not entitled to women's bodies, and all that type of jazz. And also, I think it also has to point to the ladies as well, to ensure that they're empowered, and also for them to be able to recognize different patterns. I always make this joke about how they see red flags, and for them, when they put it all together, it's like a bouquet of red flags. It looks like a bouquet of flowers. Sometimes initially they're cute, like I want a man who's strong, I want a man who will tell me when to get off. But those are usually, red flags that we have to look at, identify, and possibly, not put yourself in that type of relationship. Yeah.
When you're going to experience such things.
Yeah.
I hear you. And what would you say? What encouragement would you give somebody that's actually going through or experiencing violence in a relationship? Because also it's not just the women, right? There are men that are actually abused as well. We've also got LGBTB, if I said it correctly, who get violated because of the gender that they've chosen. So broadening it out, what would you say to those people that are experiencing that particular violence?
No, like as I said, I think the most difficult thing about most abusive relationships is that they strip you of your sense of worth. To the extent that you're even afraid to go back into, let's say, a set community where your own identity can be validated. So look, at a very, very simplistic form, I'll say walk away. It's not always that easy, but that is literally this, it's you saving your life. I think another thing that we just have to begin to speak into is around the concept of self-love. I think, the Bible talks about how we must love our neighbors as we love ourselves. At times we are so invested in loving others that we fail to even love ourselves. Loving yourself is choosing yourself when you're in those type of relationships. It's choosing to live with knowing who you are as a person, knowing your worth, knowing what you can contribute, and not putting a relationship ahead of your own dignity, your own personhood.
Must be on a pedestal. I hear you, but I think there's always that comeback. You just mentioned it. I can't leave. You know, I've built so much with this person, or where do I go from here? How? Because I think the people that are usually abused go back because they've been damaged mentally, right? Like you said, they've been made to believe that I'm not worthy. But in such difficult situations, how do we ensure that that person is protected and is safe? Because usually we tend to say, okay, you are going through this, leave. They don't leave. Right? Next thing, it's death. How do we stop it from getting to that person, or from them getting to their deathbed?
I think also I'll just come back into the whole concept of being present. I mean, someone will enter into a relationship, right? And you clearly don't approve of this relationship. And you tell this person, look, I don't approve of the relationship. They tend to sort of, slice you out of their lives. So I think we have to be in a way that says, I respect your decisions, but I'm here. And I think as a result of that, it will make sure that the communication lines are always clear, to the extent that even when things get very, very deep and very, very difficult, we are there, we're present, we are affirming their self-worth, we are giving them the right type of words. But also at the same time, I don't even know how to, let me maybe close it off with this thing that even the victim themselves have to want it for themselves. We can say what other people are doing that side, what can you say to those other people, but ultimately for you to come out of that type of situation, you have to want your freedom back, you have to want your worth back. So I think we can't want it more for them more than they want it for themselves.
Sure. So basically what we're saying is that you need, if you're experiencing the violence, you need to want to leave that place.
Exactly.
We can't take you out if you don't see the need to leave.
Exactly.
Hectic. No, that's very deep. So churches, is there anywhere that people can go, a number they can call? Can they contact you should they be experiencing this violence and they need somebody to talk to? Are you open? Are your doors open? The church's doors rather, not yours. You're married. So can they get in touch with you to seek some sort of help or some sort of direction in that dynamic?
I mean, we could take it for granted that everyone has access to churches, but also at the same time, when you look at churches, do they necessarily have the facility to deal with this type of thing? So I think it's quite difficult, even in terms of what spaces they would have to go to. Then I would guess I would point them out to, say, social workers, and also another thing. I forgot this. Domestic violence, GBV. It's not a family issue. It's a criminal issue. And it's quite painful that when you say you get into an argument or some confrontation, there's a family meeting that's called.
Oh, yes.
We shouldn't call a family meeting. We should call the police.
Sure. Deep.
It is
That's the
not
number
a
you
family-
dial.
And you know, the funny thing is this, and let me just put it, let's say on you, Zintle, that domestic violence seems so inhumane until it is done by your brother.
Yeah.
All of us have been somewhat exposed to an abusive individual, and we often stand with this person.
Protect them.
We protect them. We don't know that it could be your daughter tomorrow. So I think let's try to be as objective as possible. Domestic violence, GBV, is not a family issue.
That's very true.
It is a criminal issue. But now, let's say you have a romantic relationship that is not necessarily recognized, right? Let's say people are not married, but it's abusive. In that type of context, you can't really, it's very difficult to reach out to family. I think in that type of case, friends and respected individuals have to be the ones that intervene.
That is very true. So, from a biblical point of view, or as a Christian rather, do you think it would be advised to tell a person that's going through it, we pray about it? Because that's what we usually do, right? We're just like, pray about it, you'll be fine. Do you think for a person in that state, that would be the right thing to say to them? Or like you said, rather, ascertain them, tell them that, you know what, you are worth it. You are. What can we do biblically as a Christian? What do we say?
I think again, it comes back to the issue of community, and in community there's counsel, right? And that counsel there is not really to say pray about it. I think, look, Scripture says, let's look at it in the context of marriage, right? Scripture says the only ground for divorce is adultery. Now, GBV is not adultery, right? But we have come to there's a community standard in the church that says, even in that type of context, even if necessarily he's not, being unfaithful, even if he's just hitting you, we're saying you need to walk away, you need to move. So I think then to answer your question, we can't say pray about it.
Yeah.
Any hint of violence is a door for you to walk away. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, you heard it. If your friend, family member, anybody that you know of is abusive, report them. Dial 10-111 like Pastor Martin said. It's not a thing for family to discuss. It's actually really a crime. I totally agree with that. Pastor, any books that we should expect? I know you write. Where can we find your books? Should we expect any new releases?
All right, so I've written 2 books. The first one is called The Joseph Generation. It's about the life of Joseph, chronicling his rise towards prominence. The second one is called The Multiply Effect. It's looking into the multiplication of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. And it basically asks the questions, what's your 5 loaves, what's your 2 fish? And then at the moment, I'm currently writing a book on relationships, basically a path sort of towards marriage. It's called the Relationship Series, looking at passion, purpose, and purity. So that one should be dropping before August. If you want to get my books, you can reach out to me on social media, Martin Reform Giba on Facebook, and it's also Martin Reform on Instagram as well. So you can reach out there.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, Babugeli, you've heard it here. We have discussed the matter of GBV, and should you be going through this, please walk away. And there are also helplines where you can get assisted. Please do reach out, talk to somebody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and do follow us on Gospel News SA on all our social media platforms, even on YouTube. From me and Pastor Mkiu, it is adios.